Down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Whiskey Musings broadcast. I am your legend in his own mind and host, Rick. So tonight, tonight's topic, I announced it earlier, tonight's topic has to deal with things that the public does that kind of makes you scratch your head and wonder. And to be honest with you, I wasn't planning on really doing this, but considering the events that have happened this week throughout the entire country, including what's happening right now in several cities across the country, I would be remiss in not at least mentioning it in some capacity. So from that standpoint, I just want to bring up that the death of the man in Minneapolis, and I'm not even going to mention anything about the racial piece because realistically, it doesn't matter. The race part makes no difference. The man died while in custody, and how he died is still, obviously we have the video. Police brutality is really a big thing nowadays, but we have the video, and the video is apparently, showing him dying because he was being knelt on by another officer. And while I don't want to mention the race or even talk about the race thing, race seems really to be an incredibly hot issue in today's day and age. And I honestly, I don't understand why, but that's coming from apparently a white male who is over the age of 40. And that seems to be a problem in today's society because I cannot express the words or even do anything like sympathize apparently in today's day and age. And so that kind of starts off the entire night because that by itself is something that I sit and shake my head at. Just because I happen to be of one ethnicity and just because I happen to have been born in a certain time frame, I can't by some reason even mention any of this and either stand up or say anything about what's going on because of the fact that I happen to be those two things. Now, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really matter what the race is. Makes no difference to me whatsoever. Because of the fact that the man was in cuffs and he died while in police custody is the problem. Now, the police, granted, have their duty and they have a very thankless job. And they go through rigorous training, at least that's what I've been told, to try and weed out some of the tendencies that you find in these particular incidents. And I know that they go through a psychological evaluation as well. And this becomes a very large issue when it comes to things like the tragic death of an individual who was in custody. Now, I've heard reports that the coroner's office has released a report, an official report that basically says that this individual did not die due to asphyxiation. And whether or not that's true, I'm not even going to try and argue the veracity of that report or the purposes behind that report, because everything in a critical thinking situation, everything is suspect. Everything is on the table to question as to what's going on. And it's not even just questioning it from the standpoint of trying to defend one side or the other, because this particular issue we shouldn't even be defending. I mean, the fact of the matter is, when all is said and done, the man died, he was in police custody, and he should have gotten medical attention, and he didn't. And for that, the person who is responsible, the one person who is responsible, has already been arrested from reports, has already been charged with several crimes, and should ideally be run through our justice system and the proper justice be metered out. Now, that being said, assuming that everything that happens the way that it's supposed to, the other thing that makes me scratch my head in terms of the public is what's happening right now. Now, protesting by itself is absolutely fine. There is no reason why you cannot protest. In fact, it's even in our Constitution to address our government for grievances. We have that as a part of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. The thing about it is, though, is that there is a fine line between protesting and when it becomes criminal. And so going around and attacking businesses, attacking civilians, attacking buildings and cars and all of these other things, this is what makes me kind of scratch my head and wonder why. I understand that these people have been reported to where they feel like they have not gotten a way to get their voice heard, that they haven't been able to express the frustration that they're feeling. And understandably, not being able to express your frustration and to be able to effectively communicate your grievances and have them fall on what appear to be deaf ears is a very large portion of a level of frustration. But look at this from the other side of the spectrum, and that is these businesses that are being attacked and looted and destroyed have absolutely nothing to do realistically with the treatment that the police are giving to its citizens. And that's really the question. And there's even reports, I mean, there's tons of reports of these people that are out there that have been bussed in or shipped in. They're paid protesters, things like that. There's some questions and reports about things like pallets of bricks showing up in front of businesses and that type of stuff. So, you know, to look at this entire situation as it stands right now is to imagine that there is something going on that is amiss here. And so a critical thinker would stand up and say, you know what, the act itself, the incident itself was definitely wrong. However, the things that are following after that incident and all of the things that are happening after that incident, you have to question, where's the motivation? What is the point of all this? Because to be honest with you, I think most people in America would agree that the death of that man while in custody was wrong. And that ultimately is where the crime is. And for the purposes of protesting the treatment of that man in particular, I could see gathering, protesting, standing in the street with signs or standing on the street corners with signs, things like that. But, and maybe even I could even understand if mobs like went and attacked government buildings. That I could at least understand. But to go and attack businesses that have absolutely nothing to do with this entire situation is questionable and suspect. And to even allow things like that to happen, just from the standpoint of, you know, people who are part of the protest, to sit and even say something like that or do something like that, it makes me question a lot about the public and their level of critical thinking. And I think a lot of these people that are doing these things, or at least instigating them, are potentially paid people, or they could just be people who are just, going out and doing these things because they want to, because anarchy is cool and fun. But regardless, no matter what you say or do about this situation, the facts that are being presented and coming out, you cannot attack things that have nothing to do with what's happening or are very far removed from what's happening. And that's where I shake my head in terms of the public. So from that standpoint, that's all I'm going to say about that whole situation. So at this point, and I'm going to wait for some things to come out in order to truly understand what the situation actually is, and to make an attempt at a critical thinking, intelligent point of view to focus on. Now, that being said, here's some other things that I see the public doing, which makes me kind of scratch my head. Here's one, and I'm actually guilty of this one. I have done this before in the past. So you're driving down the road, you're on the highway, and you're going along, and all of a sudden you find that you want to change lanes. You turn on your turn signal. You look through your mirrors, over your shoulder, you do all the safety checks, everything else. And you go ahead and you make that change. Now, once you've made the change, ideally, the turn signal automatically turns off. But in some cases, because depending upon how far that wheel turns and those kinds of things, the turn signal may not turn off. And so it's stuck there, flashing at people behind you and in front of you to indicate that you want to make that corner. You want to make that turn. So then I come along, and being the nice person that I am as I'm driving, I come along and I see that flashing light, and I think you want to come in. But you don't. And another mile goes by, and another mile goes by, and another mile goes by, and pretty soon I finally realize, hey, you're not going to move in. So I go ahead and pass you. And this happens not only in just like standard vehicles, but it also happens in trucks. And I've actually caught myself doing it. So, from that standpoint, just that seems to me, that makes me scratch my head. It's like you're an operator behind the vehicle. And like I said, I'm guilty of it too, at times. But you're the operator of that vehicle. Don't you think you should look and see and make sure that that turn signal got turned off? Another thing, you're standing in line at a restaurant, and you're sitting there and you have your phone out, and you're looking at your phone or doing whatever with your phone. And you get up to the counter. Well, now, the whole time that you've been in line, you should have been deciding what you're going to order. But instead, you're focused so much on your phone that you kind of forget the fact that you need. So you end up, when the person behind the counter asks you, what'll you have? And you're looking up at the menu and that kind of stuff, and you're sitting there when the entire time you were in line, as it wound back and forth, you could have figured that out. Now, as somebody that has a little bit of a challenge when it comes to visual acuity, I can tell you that there are certain times that I can't see the menu, or I can't read certain words on the menu. And so going up to the counter, I may take an extra second to look at the menu. But I also will try and find other ways to mitigate that. Like, for an example, if the store or if the restaurant has menus that are placed out so that you can pull them and read them as you're going through the line to figure out what you want, then by all means, I go ahead and use them. So that's another thing that I kind of scratch my head at. We've gotten so wrapped up around our own personal lives that we tend to forget the impacts that we have on other people. like those people who are in the line behind you. Not to mention the fact that your hesitancy at the counter adds additional minutes and time that shouldn't be there, because you should have been ready when you got up to the counter. You should have been ready. Now, another thing. Now, I do travel for my work, and one of the things that I do find interesting in terms of travel is the fact that, you know, the airlines, they raised their prices. They started charging for baggage to go put a bag underneath the plane. And granted, I mean, I've flown, you know, several domestic airlines. Now, international flights, they haven't charged, at least the ones that I've done. They don't charge. But for the domestic flights, they charge you anywhere from like $30 to $50 for a bag. Now, one thing that I don't understand is people here in America will try and get around paying that additional money for a ticket you've already spent maybe, you know, $500 for. You're not going to not going to put the bag underneath. And so what do? You find a bag that is the biggest possible bag that you can find. You pack it as full as you possibly can, to the point where it is straining to keep all of the stuff that you're bringing along inside the bag. And then you come on board the plane and you try and stuff that into the overhead compartment. And you slow everybody else down because of the fact that you are trying to save $30 or $50. Now, I personally think that the airlines should actually go and hide those fees. I think they should just raise the price of the ticket and not even tell you that it's for baggage underneath. But apparently there's some kind of a law that prevents them from doing this, which is fine. However, you know, I just don't understand the whole purpose. I get it. There's been, you know, theft and people getting into your bag and stuff like that. I mean, for me personally, I don't send anything but clothes. So, you know, that's the only thing I put underneath. All of my expensive items I carry on the plane with me. And believe me, that's not always easily done, but I find a way to make it work. And so when I get to the other point, I mean, yes, there have been lost bags and things like that, but technology has kind of worked it around where, you know, sometimes that doesn't happen. I've had a couple bags lost in the last several years, but in terms of being lost, like missing for a day or two. But generally speaking, you know, they have those 20-minute guarantees now. They have all these different technological things like scanning the bags in and off. And I'm not advocating, if you feel that strongly about it, that's fine. If you really feel that strongly about taking everything that you want on the plane, figure out how to do it. Figure out how to do it in such a way that other people are not impacted by your desire to do things in this fashion. Because honestly, I mean, that's realistically kind of where we're at in today's world. In today's world, we spend so much time thinking about ourselves that we tend to forget that there are other people in this world that are impacted by our decisions. And so that's the challenge. That's the issue. That's one of the things that I scratch my head and I wonder what in the heck the public is actually doing in this case. So I've kind of given you some three things that I see in terms of the public. And another one of mine that really is sort of frustrating is, and especially with considering today's, you know, the scare and everything that we've had over the last couple of months, is, you know, not washing your hands. I mean, I know that preschoolers and everybody else, you were taught to wash your hands, and yet there are still people today that have walked out of the bathroom without washing their hands. And, you know, I just don't know. It makes me scratch my head and wonder in terms of the public as to why we are in such a case right now that we cannot think beyond just us. I mean, holding open the door, that used to be a common practice. Common practice. And I've actually, taught my son to do that and that type of thing. But even just holding open the door, I'll be lucky if I get one person out of maybe 3 or 4 that go through the door to say thank you or to even acknowledge that I'm holding the door open for them. We've gotten to a point in our society that we've just wrapped ourselves around internally around other things like our cell phones and selfies. And do you notice what that's saying? It's all talking about the self. And we need to start thinking more about what others think. It just seems like we've thrown away the whole gamut of what we believe is acceptable in society, and we've turned it into the me society. And that seems to be problematic in dealing with the public. So now I'm going to ask you, I'm going to throw this out to you guys. And I'm going to go ahead. The phone lines are open. So if you have a interesting thing, and it doesn't really matter what it is, but if you have something interesting to even talk about when it comes to what's happening today, if you want to talk about, public interactions with the public that just make you scratch your head and wonder, go ahead, give me a call, put it in the chat. I've got chat open here on Facebook. I've got chat open here on YouTube. Put it in the chat. Let's talk about it. Let's throw it open here. Because this is something that I think is really necessary in today's day and age to understand exactly what is happening in terms of American society for what we deal with. And I'm only kind of focused on domestic. I mean, realistically, other cultures have their own ways of dealing with things. They do things in different ways, but I'm talking about right here, right now. I mean, I'm not even going so far as to like the sir and the ma'am and just basic politeness, basic things that make you scratch your head and wonder just what in the heck is going on with our society. We've turned it into such a mess. We really have. I mean, we've given up the idea that we are here to necessarily help other people. And I prescribe to the philosophy that as long as what I'm doing doesn't affect others, then and breaks any laws, of course, then I should be fine. But even now, it's like, we go through and for an example, we have this thing on the internet where people are wearing stuff to Walmart and their photographs are being taken and they're laughing. People are laughing at other people. And you know what? I admit there are some atrocious things that these people wear. But at the same time, I'm understandably scratching my head and going, why does that even really matter? I mean, if somebody is that comfortable in their clothes and it's not showing anything indecent, then what's the point? Why even say anything about it? If that person's comfortable in it, I mean, yes, it may not be all that attractive to you. It may not be, appropriate in your mind, but as long as things are covered and they're not breaking any laws, why does that part even matter? Again, it's kind of one of those focus things, but again, it also makes you scratch your head and wonder. I mean, did they look into the mirror? Do they realize what there are? Self-image is a big thing when it comes to doing things like that. But yet, shaming others and shaming people for what they wear is not appropriate. It's not necessarily appropriate either. So anyway, things that the public does that we take on, that makes us scratch our heads, makes us wonder. Same thing goes with like the person pulling into a parking spot. Here's something that doesn't make any sense to me. None whatsoever. So you're sitting there and you're waiting on a space. Now, common courtesy basically was that if you turned on your turn signal and you were, lined up and ready to go into the space, that you would be allowed to move in. But I've seen several times, and I've actually had it happen to me, where other people are just so self-absorbed, they've gone and they've cut me off, and they go into the space. And it's like, hello, I was waiting for that spot. And sometimes driving a big vehicle like I do, I mean, I don't even bother with like trying to park anywhere close. I'll park way out in the lot because I can actually walk, and I can walk to the store. So that part doesn't really bother me any. But I also understand and I think about things like how large my vehicle is. So I try to, as a good, what I would consider a good citizen and courtesy, would be to try and make sure that I leave enough space for the next person in the lot and that kind of stuff. But the general public, for some reason, just it doesn't matter to them, and they sit there and they scratch their head. It makes me scratch my head. So, smiling to people, saying hello, even being just friendly to people in today's day and age, it seems to all be going on. Now, let's see. I've got a couple of comments here. We need to appreciate people. People would smile and make some conversation. It would be so much better in society. Yes, it would. It absolutely would. If we could just smile a little more and be a little more accepting of people, I think that would be incredible. To be able to even just imagine what it would be like if everyone sort of accepted others for what they were, and not whether you're, Democrat, Republican, black, white, Asian, tall, short, fat, skinny. Doesn't make any difference. None of that makes any difference. It really doesn't. We are all people. And if for each person to be happy within their own lives, their own skin, and what they're doing, that's what matters. I mean, America was designed to be a melting pot. That was the whole purpose of it, was to bring people together that all had the same common ideals: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And we've lost some of that. And it shows in our public, the way the public treat other people. And you got to sit and scratch your head. I mean, here's another example, a story just over the course of the last couple of weeks. This individual was not wearing a mask, and the store didn't dictate whether or not the mask was supposed to be worn or not. And you can make whatever argument you want in terms of, transmission, etc. I don't even want to make that whole process. But rather than, allowing people to live and let live like we should, because she's not doing anything necessarily illegal at this point, but a mob of people ran this woman out, and all she was doing was trying to gather some food. Maybe she didn't have a mask available. Maybe she couldn't afford a mask. Who knows? But the point is that, everybody got together with the mob mentality in the public, and it makes me scratch my head, because everybody else that was in that store, other than her in the incident that was videotaped, was wearing a mask. So they're already protected as much as the mask is going to protect them, for the most part. And as long as they stay the 6-foot distance, which they should have been, that realistically shouldn't have been that much of a problem. So why is it that they went ahead and ganged up on her and forced her to leave the store? I mean, they were, getting pretty adamant about the fact that they wanted her to leave. And that just makes me scratch my head, public-wise. Why do we do these things in public? So, realistically, it goes all back to my philosophy, and my thought process is, hey, if you're not hurting anybody, because she seemed healthy, I mean, in that particular instant, or, whatever, it's an effect that I think that we have, within society today, and it's become acceptable. It's become acceptable for that stuff to happen. And it makes me scratch my head. It makes me wonder. It makes me think about all these different things that we've got going on in society today. We should be banding together, and we're not. Why not? You know, talking on the phone, and this actually, I think I've said this before on the show. This has been a problem for me, is talking on the phone in the toilet. To me, I think it's rude and insensitive to the other person on the other line, on the other end of the line. But having personal conversations is something that I think that we've tended to get away from. And, again, people acting like this in public, they make me scratch my head. I don't want to air my dirty laundry necessarily in front of strangers who don't need to know what's going on more so than anybody else. And that's a question. Why has that standard become normal? So anyway, I mean, I just there's certain things in society. I mean, here's another thing that makes me scratch my head. And I'm laughing, but it's more of an ironic laugh than anything else. What about at kids soccer games, sporting events, whatever? I understand, being a parent myself, I understand the desire that you want to have your kid to be, like the best kid. And it's a pride thing. It's a matter of feeling good about your child and what they are doing in whatever it is, whatever event, sport, whatever. But to go to the length of physically attacking an official who is at the game, I mean, realistically, it's not the kids are playing. They're just playing the game. They're playing a game, for gosh sakes. And in some cases, it's even, a recreational league. It's not even like a professional league. I mean, my gosh, these kids, they're not like vying for the next contract. They're not vying for the next endorsement. They're not even at the point or at the level of going to a professional sports team. I mean, statistically speaking, you can't even get on a professional sports team with, the odds are completely against you in the first place. So to sit here and to think that, your son or daughter, playing recreational sports, and that's the key, recreational sports, to go and attack someone who, may or may not be getting paid. They might be just volunteering. Who knows? But to go and attack that person is beyond me. Now, whether or not you agree with their call or not, or the decision that was made, that's a discussion that you can have. But to go out and physically attack them is just something to me that is mind-boggling. I mean, first of all, it's not even that important, honestly. And the kids, realistically, they just want to play. In fact, I've seen, my kids that 5 minutes after the event is over, they've already forgotten in most cases. And the parents are the ones that sit there and try to reanalyze the game and, and it took me many, many years to even work through that, because there were times where I had conversations with my son. I'd be like, hey, you should have done this, you should have done that. And realistically, all he cared about, and what took me forever to realize, all he cared about was that he was playing. That's all that mattered. He just wanted to play and have fun. The outcome of the game meant nothing. So, I mean, I don't understand. I don't get what the big deal is in the general public. I mean, I've seen parents turn ugly. I've been an official in the past, and I've seen parents get ugly. I've seen them. Now, if I'm standing on the sidelines, I try to alleviate some of that stress. So where if the parent obviously doesn't understand the rules of the game and why the official did what they did, and I do, or at least can offer up some perspective, I've been able to do that. But the reality of it is that just the general public understanding that these kids are here to just have fun. That's it. They're just there to have fun. I just don't understand the general public. The general public nowadays doesn't make sense to me. I mean, okay, now here's another thing, and this is kind of disgusting. All right, this is this is kind of disgusting, even from the standpoint. I mean, first of all, these places are completely petri dishes. Okay, complete petri dishes. But on the plane, do you really have to take your shoes and socks off and put your feet up on the seat in front of you? Stick your feet through on the armrest? I mean, seriously, we're packed in like sardines as it stands. How do you even have the room to be able to do this? I mean, I can understand taking off your shoes and socks, or shoes at least, not socks, but shoes at least, and leaving them underneath the seat in front of you. I can get that. You're trying to get comfortable. Okay. I understand that. But the thing about it is that, you know, you're already in a situation where you've got a lot of people surrounding you. It's sort of like farting in an elevator. I mean, it's funny, granted. It's hilarious in some cases, but realistically, I mean, does it do you any good? I mean, you can be inconvenienced for a few, hours in some cases. It kind of depends on the flight. I mean, hey, on transatlantic flights, they give you these little slippers, and at least on actually, I'm trying to think. I'm not even sure. Maybe going to Europe, I can't remember. But anyway, I know going over to the Asian cultures, they do that. They tend to take their shoes off during the flight, and they give you these little slippers, and you can go ahead and put those on. But still, I mean, even then, it's just, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you putting your feet on somebody else's headrest? Or not even that, well, sometimes even the headrest. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen some of those photos where these kids or these people are like pretzeled back, where their feet are up on the headrest and everything else. And it makes me scratch my head to, like, first of all, where did you get the audacity to do that? And then secondly, even if you do have the wherewithal to go ahead and do that, just the impact that it makes on other people. The people around you who are trying to make the best of their trip, just like you. And they're just as cramped. I mean, if anything else, just get up and walk the plane. Holy crap. I mean, there are other things that you can do to try and avoid this, but this is, it's a public thing. It makes me scratch my head in wonder. Where, in terms of the public, where did we go? Where did we go? And honestly, I don't even know any kind of an answer to this sort of thing. I really don't. I have no solution, per se. But these are some of the things that, that we have to deal with on a daily basis, but that we sit and wonder. We think about this. And we kind of wonder what in the heck's going on with the world today. Well, common courtesy is one thing that we could all work on. Every single one of us could work on. We could all work on being more polite to one another. Just understanding some of the things that we could do within our world that, and I'm sorry, my dog is kind of doing something behind the curtain here, but what can we do in this world to help improve it and help improve the world? The world that we can improve is our own world that we live in. Be a little more polite. Be a little more sensitive to the things that are going on around us, to our friends to our family, to even just the general public. Just centralized politeness, I think, is a big way and a big key that we can use to start making lives a little bit better. And it's not just you. I mean, there are times where I've been polite. I've tried to be polite, even in the face of adversity. And, you know, it's hard. It is hard to do this. It is really hard to do this. But it's one of those things where we can sit back and we can stop and think and scratch our heads one less time to understand what's going on within the public realm. And these are all things that just don't make any sense to me or to anybody else realistically, because, you know, here's another thing. Going into the store with a complaint. Okay? You're going into the store with a complaint, and I've had this happen before. But you go into the store, you're in the public service, you're a customer service representative or whatever. How many times do you get yelled at for just generic stuff that honestly has nothing to do with you? You were not the cause of the issue. And if anything else, your job is to try and help that individual gain satisfaction, gain a ending result. And yet, emotions take over, and the first thing that people do is they start yelling at the person on the other end of the phone or the other side of the counter. And they start yelling and everything else. I mean, this person, unfortunately, all they're doing is they're just trying to do their job. They're trying to make sure that you're satisfied with whatever service or product is out there. Now, I completely understand that if you have bad service or you got a bad product or something along those lines, you know, I totally understand that there are times where issues do crop up. And that in those instances, you know, everything can be done or nothing can be done. It really depends on the situation. But the key is that person that is helping you or attempting to help you or trying to understand the level of frustration that you are leveling at them for something that is beyond what they control is, again, a questionable situation because of the fact that you are, you know, you can demonstrate your level of frustration. You can demonstrate your level of irritability with that person in a different sense rather than just yelling at them. And, you know, part of the reason I understand those people kind of have thankless jobs. I mean, honestly, I would be a little frustrated if I got yelled at all the time. So from that standpoint, I mean, there are certain times where, you know, we need to take a step back. We need to understand that these people, they're only doing their jobs. They're doing it to the best of their ability, and they may not even have the ability to take care of your particular situation, in which case there's a thing called the chain of command, and you can actually go up the chain, go to the next person, find the next person, find the next representative, find the manager, find whatever. But the point is that sitting there and yelling at that person who's sitting behind the counter or on the other end of that phone because your frustration level is so high, honestly, does nothing to resolve the situation. Again, that person didn't cause the situation. They're not even part of the situation, but yet their job is to help you resolve the situation. So at least present to them a little more compassion and understanding over the fact that they are in a bad situation just like you are, in the fact that they're attempting to try and resolve something that they have no control over whatsoever. Now, more often than not, I have found that if you approach these people with dignity and respect, you generally will gain a much better outcome than what you would if you just started yelling at them. And especially like hanging up the phone on the person or slamming the phone down or slamming your fist on the desk. I mean, you know, there are times where things like that are going to happen, that you will necessarily need to do something a little more drastic in order to get things accomplished. However, that being said, there's no reason why you cannot do it in a polite and civilized way. Again, the general public yelling at people behind a customer service counter for something that they had no control over, they weren't even anywhere near what you were doing. Yes, they are a representative of the company, but beyond that, they really have nothing else for you. So why yell at them? Scratching the head and wondering what happened. Where did this come from? So I guess in terms of, you know, long-term solution, and I know my last several episodes have been kind of lighthearted and everything. This is a little deep. But I'm entitled to that every once in a while. So that being said, I think the solution is, again, take a look at your behavior, take a look at what you do, take a look at how you react in certain situations, and try to do better. Try to just make your world just a scotch, a little bit better. And I think that will make it to where more people, kindness breeds kindness, call it karma, call it whatever, but just attempt to make things a little bit better. And maybe, just maybe, the general public eventually will catch on to this whole thing. Because unlike some people, I actually believe that there still is a heart in this country where people truly and definitely exist to where they are not as self-centered as what we think they are. And maybe it's just the area that I live in. I don't know. I mean, I've gone to the South before, and the Southern people down there, they generally tend to approach people, even if you're mean and nasty to them, they have an incredible sense of backhanded sarcasm and a hilarious way to be able to respond to what's going on. But they'll also flat out tell you if they cannot do anything or whatever else. I mean, they are polite and sweet, but they're polite and sweet in a way that, you know, there is no question as to what's going on. And that's the kind of society that that I think we need to get back to. I think that type of mentality is what we need to go back to and understand. And it's not being just PC. It's not, you know, it's not a northerner versus southerner thing. I think it's just a generic understanding that we all need to just make our own worlds, our own little fiefdoms, a little more pleasant, and that maybe that'll catch on. Maybe that'll go a little bit farther than normal. And that's kind of what we did. So I'm going to take a look here. We've got some chat going on here. Show people appreciation and gratitude for them in their jobs or even a difficult situation. Absolutely. Show some appreciation over the fact that they are there doing a very thankless job, a very tough job. And especially with certain sects of society, certain places, certain jobs that are out there that are very thankless. I mean, I don't know too many people that actually thank the customer service person who, you know, told them no because they couldn't physically do it. But even just regardless of how you feel, they're still attempting to do their job. And let's see what else here. Oh, the way you treat people is the way they will respond to you. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the nicer you are, the better off you are. Now, there have been times in my life where I've actually had to put the hammer down, but I did it in such a way that there was, first of all, no question whatsoever as to what I was looking for. And what I was asking for at the times that I did it were not anything out of the ordinary realm or out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it wasn't like I was asking for the moon. But the fact of the matter is that I wanted a certain amount of finality to the situation, and I was able to come to a solution in such a way that made it so that it was equal on both sides and it wasn't over the top. And again, I mean, I was focused looking at not only just me, but looking at other people as well, looking at what they're doing, because again, my issue is not necessarily because of the person who was in front of me trying to help me rectify the situation. It was actually with somebody else. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, we go through life, we look at our things, we focus on ourselves, and you make people scratch their heads in public over your actions. Just simple. Be nice to one another. Be kind in some ways. And I think the world will be better off overall. All right, so we're coming up on the hour. I thank you all for listening. This was great. Nobody joined, unfortunately, on the phone, but that's okay. This is a deep subject. Maybe maybe people just didn't have a chance to listen. But that being said, I do want to pass out, if there's anybody watching who is from Addie's Army. I appreciate the subscriptions, and this is my 10th episode, and I'm almost to 10 subscribers. I'm excited about that. And I appreciate everybody who has subscribed. That being said, I will go ahead and show this. So subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Twitter. You can even follow the page on Facebook. And, definitely give me a shout out. Pass along to your friends and everything. If you understand, or if you like what I'm doing and you appreciate what's going on, pass it around. Pass it. Let other people know about it. Forward my requests and my posts and that kind of stuff. Forward them out to your friends and neighbors. Encourage them to be a part of this. Also, if you want to contribute to the topics at hand, if you think of a topic, let me know. You can either post it on the page on Facebook. You can even put it in a comment on my YouTube channel. You can send it to me on my Twitter. You can also send me an email to rick@whiskeymusings.online or .net. And Whiskey Musings is the American spelling of the word whiskey. WHISKEY musings, either .net or .online. So feel free. Wow. Okay. Feel free to reach out to me at any of those locations and, pass this along, pass the word. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who has stepped up and listened in, and catch all my other episodes. Go to YouTube and look up Whiskey Musings. Whiskey Musings broadcast will probably give you the best search result. You can either do it on Google, or I think it'll pop up on YouTube appropriately. But Whiskey Musings broadcast, and you'll be able to see all of my past episodes. Go and take a listen to them, and like the ones that you like and everything else. So anyway, I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and close it down. Just remember, be nice to one another a little bit more. And if you're in any of those areas that are being hit by the current situation, be safe. And definitely with the other current situation that we have going on, the health situation, be safe there too. Do what you need to do to protect yourself, and we'll see you next time.